25 things you'll commonly find on a Stroad. Pull up a chair and settle in because today we're playing Blackout Bingo. This is City Nerd, weekly content on cities and transportation. Viewer suggested topics are always fun, and this one kind of came out of me being a Vegas newbie and embarrassingly not knowing what the city's most infamous Stroad actually is. Apparently, it isn't Charleston Boulevard, which I made a video on back in January. No, people came out of the woodwork to tell me I need to go to Boulder Highway if I want to see something truly horrifying. So yeah, we're gonna gaze upon true horror today, and don't avert your eyes, just take it all in. Let's do a quick flyover while I warn you about what's coming. I've got my bingo card ready to go, and I'll reveal the 25 spots as we go through. But along the way, we'll touch on the history of the Boulder Highway and why that history is so inextricable from the built environment that you see out there today. And there are some very ugly things out there, but also this is a glass half full channel. So we're gonna talk about things the region has done recently to improve Boulder Highway and some fairly visionary recent planning efforts that could really begin to transform the corridor in the coming years. For today though, I can only cover so much. This whole channel is a one dude operation. So everything we're gonna talk about is between the I-515 interchange on the north end and Russell Road on the south end. There's a lot more going on outside this segment, but you're gonna find that there was more than enough here to completely black out my whole bingo card. And I'm excited, so let's just get right to it. Let's start with the center square, the free square, and what that really is free parking. Like massive expanses of impermeable surface. The next Stroad I find that has metered parking anywhere on it will be the first. In this case, the free parking is courtesy of another use you'll commonly find on a Stroad, the big box discount retailer. Mark it off. Although sometimes you come across a huge parking lot that you just can't even figure out why it's there. Well, until you can. It's Skate Rock City. Like, I didn't even know old school roller skating rinks still existed, so I had to research it. Property acquired last year by none other than Floyd Money Mayweather. Like, if I show up unannounced, can I just roll with Floyd and Usher? It sure looks like it. I mean, I'm a celebrity too, so I don't see why not. Let's get into some bread and butter Stroad bingo squares. I've got a 45 mile per hour speed limit, and when your street cross section is like 200 feet wide with at least 3 lanes in each direction, people just might be exceeding the posted speed occasionally. Didn't bring my radar gun, so it's just a wild guess. Next square, curb tight sidewalks, meaning there's no planted buffer, and maybe a steel fence to keep you pinned in against high-speed traffic. It's super pleasant. Maybe I should be grateful though, because like Aurora up in Seattle, there are some sections where they just haven't gotten around to putting sidewalks in at all. It's pretty wild. And then this billboard is pretty ominous, but you have to say it's kind of spot on given the risk you're taking even trying to walk out here. Next, driveway cuts. Lots and lots of driveway cuts up and down the corridor. Conflict points and right hook opportunities for cars pulling in and out of all the wild land uses that exist on Boulder Highway, which we're gonna get to. Let's stick with the pedestrian realm for the next square and talk about obstructions. I'd like to think stuff like this is all leftovers from a time when we didn't care about the quality of the walking environment or people with mobility devices. But there are areas where I just don't even know how you begin to navigate this if you're in a wheelchair. That covers sidewalks, so let's go to pedestrian crossings. 1, they're usually spaced really far apart, and 2, because the street is so wide, they take forever to cross. The result of all this is some truly horrific pedestrian fatality and injury statistics, but look, you can't cross the whole street in one signal cycle. They just don't give you enough walk time. I could only do it in one go because I had my bike with me and I could hop on halfway through the walk phase. But look at this older couple just stuck out on this narrow median island in the middle of traffic. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And then this woman just says, screw it, I'm crossing the whole thing, walk sign or not. Scary stuff, but I also can't really blame her. Let's do a very quick history lesson to explain how we got to this place, where we have an incredibly wide arterial running through the city. Boulder Highway was laid out in 1931, and look at it. It's a straight shot, essentially from the east end of downtown Vegas, down through Henderson and the railroad pass that gets you to Boulder City and the Hoover Dam, which, not coincidentally, also started construction in 1931. And like basically every other Stroad I've talked about on this channel, it was at one point the main state highway getting you to the southeast until a parallel freeway was constructed, which was I-515 in the 1980s. So for 50 years, Boulder Highway, with its extremely wide footprint, slowly urbanized, attracting commercial and residential while still maintaining the mobility function of a highway, which is the very definition of a Stroad. Now let's get into the land use portion of our bingo game. Fast food drive-thrus, you knew this was coming. This includes drive-thrus that I can't even decipher how the traffic configuration is supposed to function. Oh, and here's a bonus for you overseas viewers. 4-lane drive-through bank. It'll haunt your dreams. Anyway, I trust you all know the best food on any Stroad is in the strip malls. And strip malls were on my bingo card too, especially since I was definitely in the market for, I don't know, some vape juice, some leather, and some new tats. I had to have a square for dispensaries. This Shango had more traffic coming in and out of it than practically any other land use I saw out here. Like, I've never seen a dispensary this big. It's like the Costco of weed. I mean, exactly how many different kinds of edible are there? Related, I do have to give the snack stores their own square. Gas stations carry a fine assortment of munchies as well, but those get a separate bingo square. Okay, in this next square, I won't spend too much time on it because I beat it to death in another video. But Boulder Highway is absolutely loaded with personal injury attorney billboards. You know what though? It doesn't have to be crash related. It could be general crime. It could be, well, this guy's a real comedian, isn't he? Or, I mean, you could just get injured in a hotel. But let's be real. With the way roads are designed in Vegas, it's really all about car crashes. Okay, so here's something I absolutely did not have on my bingo card. An actual car crash. Conveniently, law enforcement officers are able to use the recently improved bus platform and shelter as a staging area for the crash investigation and, I don't know, maybe injured people. I didn't stick around to see which attorneys showed up on the scene. The whole thing was a bit dark for me. Let's go ahead and talk transit for a minute while we're here. The sidewalk situation on Boulder Highway is pretty grim, and a couple of the transit shelters are lacking in the same way that most of the ones you see around Las Vegas are. Just not enough setback from the roadway. But you can see the region has put some investment into improving the transit service on the corridor. This is the Boulder Highway Express, or BHX, which opened for service, I think, 10 years ago. Looks like RTC was able to acquire the extra right-of-way they needed to set the shelters back appropriately. The stops have better signage and more amenities than your typical bus stop. Tactile pavers at the edge of the curb. Probably wouldn't call it BRT, but from a station design perspective, probably the best bus route in Vegas. It's just, well, the ads they put on the shelters are kind of wild. Like, do they make revenue off this? Let's get back to bingo. Every Stroad is going to have auto-oriented land uses. And by that I mean the businesses along the corridor are literally there to perpetuate car ownership. So you've got auto parts stores. And I've got another square for auto repair shops, which take up a disturbing proportion of the frontage on a corridor like this. And I do include smog check stations in this as well. Vegas is the first city I've lived in that has these. Maybe I've just lived a sheltered life. Used car dealerships, obviously, we can check that one off. Floppy, wavy, slightly disturbing tubal guys. Whatever you call these things, they're definitely a bingo square. Recreational vehicle dealerships, I definitely had on my bingo card, but what I did not have a square for was boat dealerships. I mean, last I checked, we're in the Mojave Desert, so what exactly is the plan here? I guess there's Lake Mead, but the water level hasn't exactly been predictable the last couple of years. So how do you even launch? Sorry, but I find the idea of multiple boat dealerships in the middle of Vegas extremely funny. Okay, continuing the theme, I've got a square for RV parks. I mean, there's just a variety out here. 1,000 trails if you're classy. But you've got KOA, so Boulder Highway is appealing to all segments of the itinerant RV owner lifestyle market. Then this next square I'm gonna call motels, but it really includes a whole spectrum of shorter and longer term rental hybrids. You've got nightly, weekly, month to month. And look, this part of the video isn't really supposed to be funny. The reality of a lot of Stroads is it's sort of a low value residential environment where marginalized people can go, where they can maybe afford to just survive or work on turning their lives around if they're in transition, or find a way to get a leg up. And they're people who deserve respect as much as anyone else. And the way a street like this is designed isn't always showing that kind of respect. Neither is misspelling the word pets. Sorry, I just couldn't resist. Another square, self-storage operations that, well, a lot of times these buildings look nicer than the apartments on a street like this. It says a lot. Okay, a couple really good bingo squares yet to come. And I'll talk about the future vision for Boulder Highway, which can maybe give you inspiration for how a Stroad could be reimagined in your own city. But first, brief reminder to drop a like on the video and subscribe, even if, or maybe especially if, you're completely horrified by what you've seen so far. Connect on the apps if you care to. Join Nerd Patreon if you want to support the channel directly. And sub count check. As of taping, we're still just shy of 100K. But we do now have enough subscribers to fill the iconic Camp Nou, home of FC Barcelona. In addition to being very large, it's also very urbanist. You do not want to drive here. Also, very fun place to see a match, and this is Catalonia, so they're not afraid to get political. I doubt this ended up on the Worldwide Champions League broadcast feed, but they don't mess around here. Let's get back to bingo. I have to admit there were things that kind of defied my ability to anticipate and actually have on my bingo card. I shared most of them, but swap meets are cool, and sidewalk appliance shopping, I just didn't see that coming. But there were things that were very easy to anticipate, and yeah, this gets a bingo square. Okay, and this one's very Vegas specific, but casino hotels. They actually call this section of the Stroad the Boulder Strip. It's got its own Welcome to Las Vegas sign, and it's kind of like the locals' version of Las Vegas Boulevard, except I guess the gambling rules are better and like the buffets are cheaper. I don't know, I still can't wrap my head around the idea of a locals casino. Do people in New Orleans sit around eating gumbo every day? Do people in Orlando go to the Magic Kingdom constantly? It just seems like this is exactly what you'd want to get away from if you lived here. These places do actually have bike parking, but apparently not staple racks. I've got a wave rack at the Longhorn, and Sam's Town has this little corral of like elementary school wheel benders. Come on people, just staple racks, keep it simple. One great feature of Sam's is it's got this indoor park under an atrium, which is actually kind of pleasant. What really put it over the top for me though, were these hyper-realistic animatronic woodland creatures, barely distinguishable from the real thing. Man, technology has come a long way. Anyway, for those of you out there looking for a job, and I realize this channel has really sold you on Vegas, I just want to point out Arizona Charlie's is offering a generous signing bonus, and I've got HR's number right here. So have them make out the recruiting bonus check to City Nerd LLC. Final bingo square, completely unrelated to the last one, I'm sure. Predatory lending operations, payday loans, title loans, pawn shops. Boulder Highway has them all, and I'm sure they do excellent business. Painful. Okay, I want to look at future plans for Boulder Highway. But first, let's acknowledge agency partners have made some improvements out here. Everyone would agree it's not enough, but we talked about the transit upgrades, and they've also required frontage improvements where recent development has occurred, like the East Side Cannery. I don't love meandering sidewalks, but the buffer from the street is a huge plus. And they've added more ped crossings, which, they're still really long crossings, but signalized crossing frequencies up and down a corridor like this are really important. Okay, quick look at Reimagine Boulder Highway, which went final in early 2020. I love a clear statement of purpose that demonstrates that agency partners and stakeholders agreed on what the problems even are. It's just not a given in a thing like this. The current typography acts as a barrier to human scale sense of place and community-oriented development. Contributes to high speeds, crashes, and pedestrian fatalities. It's actually pretty strong language to put out there. And then you get to the preferred concept. There are a few different cross sections for different corridor segments, but they all have center running, dedicated transit lanes, two-way cycle tracks on each side, a lot more trees and lighting, and much better sidewalks. As always with these things, it comes down to how are they going to get the funding? It is interesting to me that when you want to add a freeway lane or reconfigure an interchange, hundreds of millions of dollars just seem to show up in a federal earmark or a regional bond measure. But retrofitting these orphan highways rarely gets prioritized. I'd just say this is about safety and it's about dignity. A lot of times for the most vulnerable, most marginalized people who, of course, don't have the political power. But transforming streets like these, where we all know what the problems are and have for a long time, well, these are just about the most important transportation projects there are. You gotta fund it. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks to the patrons for helping support this truly taxing field visit, and for subsidizing the calorie intake that was required to bike to Boulder Highway and back. 3 words, tacos al pastor. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode next week, and I'll see you then.